It's the Brad and John Show.
BJ Show for June 6th, 2025. And this is the P Block, which means we start right around 7:20. I mention my father from time to time, and John, thank you for never making fun of what I say about my father. You make fun of everything else I say, but never about my father.
No, I would never, yeah.
My father was a World War II veteran. Matter of fact, it's sad because of the fact that after my father passed away, when we get ready, my brother and I, we get ready for his funeral. My brother got his DD-214, and we found out things that my father had never told us. He had three, not one, not two, but three Bronze Stars with Combat Valor, the V's. There's two different editions of the Bronze Star. And the thing that blew us both away, my dad joined the Army in 1942, and he retired from the Army in 1982. He served 4 years after active duty and 36 years as reserve, and he retired as a captain. But a lot of interesting things, and this is probably something that I'll mention, and I'm not kidding when I tell this story. My brother Lance, my father had an argument with my mother over naming my brother Lance. Do you have any idea what my father wanted to name my brother? And I'm not kidding. This is not a joke. This is a true story.
Is it Douglas, like after MacArthur?
No, he wanted to name him, I will spell it, D-E-A, no, excuse me, try it again, D-E-E-D-A-Y. D-Day.
D-Day, wow.
Because he was born on June 6th, D-Day. And as a World War II veteran, he felt that should be remembrance of this important day in the American history. And if you go and watch these documentaries, and obviously if you go watch Saving Private Ryan, which is probably the best, there was another movie that was made back in the 60s with Eddie Arnold, a bunch of people in it, a bunch of big Hollywood stars at the time. But this was a incredible turning event of World War II. And there's all sorts of crazy stories about it. Then one of them being that there's, tons of stories about this, but one of them being that it did catch the Germans off guard to a certain extent. They expected something like this, but not in the magnitude that happened. And when it started to look really bad for the Germans, Adolf Hitler was asleep, and nobody would wake him up because you didn't wake up the Fuhrer. If you woke up the Fuhrer, you were in trouble because he didn't want to be woken up from his sleep. I mean, there's all sorts of crazy stories about that. But once again, tons of American casualties on D-Day. The first wave, the landing craft, and if you go back in history, it didn't go as planned. The first wave was supposed to be, they literally, and this is actually sort of a fascinating story. I don't want to bore you too much with this, John. They decided, and they actually did this, but it didn't work very well. They made these tanks that floated. Okay, you ready for this? They put these things on the tanks where they put a canvas wall around the tank, and they put the tank into the water, and they tested this, and it did work. The only problem was the seas were in the channel were very, very, very rough that morning, and a lot of these tanks sunk to the bottom. The tanks were supposed to hit the beach first and essentially take the brunt of, which they knew they were going to get small arms fire and mortar fire and things like that, and the tanks were supposed to neutralize that. It didn't happen. And the soldiers, the first wave of soldiers, special on Omaha, hit the beach first, and a lot of them were just literally, some of them never got out of the water, which is very sad. But anyway, D-Day, Hildebrand, that was what my brother was supposed to be named. How about that for a story, right?
That's incredible.
Yes. Now, last night, I went to the two events. Let's do the St. Charles multi-chamber event, okay? Dan Borgmeyer was there, gave a nice little speech. And afterwards, I went up and talked to Dan. I go, we talked about you this morning, because we talked about him yesterday morning, about the controversy with the St. Charles Convention Center, which is in St. Charles. And literally, when you walk across the street to the west, you are in unincorporated St. Charles County. And I said there were 110 unincorporated pockets of St. Charles County within the city limits of St. Charles. Dan said 184. Is that crazy?
Wow, that's incredible.
Is that crazy or what?
That's nuts, yeah.
I mean, and once again, we're talking about sometimes it's one piece of property, could be like a commercial building or something like that, could be a couple of houses, could be a small subdivision. That's the case with the place right across from the convention center. There's a bunch of houses. It used to be a mobile home park right there in the corner of across from the convention center, right on Veterans Memorial. Used to be a mobile home park. It's gone. There is another mobile home park further west for that. And I said to him, I go, well, why do you keep letting this happen? And he sort of nodded and said, well, we're working on it. And I go, what does that mean? And he says, well, we're trying to work out some deals with some of those people in those unincorporated areas and bring them into the city of St. Charles. And why this does make a difference is crazy is because if you live in one of those little unincorporated islands in the city of St. Charles and you're not in the city of St. Charles and you dial 911, it should be set up in the system that you're not in St. Charles City or in St. Charles County. And even if like a St. Charles City patrolman would be like down the street, he can't respond. Well, I shouldn't say he can't. They won't respond for the most part. If there's like a murder going on or there's fire or something like that, and the St. Charles City police is close to this little unincorporated area within St. Charles City, they will. And I know
But if it's a man in a fox costume or a woman in a fox costume dropping their drawers,
right,
then they won't.
Because the article in the Post-Dispatch talked about the fact that they had the comments in there from the St. Charles County police force of what they're doing. And, see, sometimes this is what's frustrating to me when you see levels of government, and I'm not saying this is true all the time, but you see this happen where, well, we're from the county, you're from the city, we can't do this. Well, we're from the city and we're from the county, you should do it. No, you don't understand. Get what I'm saying, John?
Yeah, I do know what you're saying.
It's for the greater good. It's for the greater good, okay? Then, when I went to the place, okay, John, when I say this, I sent you the picture. You see the one picture that I think is where they have the big heads, not like like headshots of what the picture I sent you. Who is it?
They look like, so for people who don't know what Brad's talking about, if you think of old pictures showing Italian gangsters from New York City, they're black and white headshots of elected officials, including David Gregory, Phil Olerking, George Shruza, and then they have witty catchphrases like, you need to listen to us, pal, and things like that.
Right. Now, John, looking at those pictures and judging from the people that are holding those pictures up, how tall will you say those banners were, those signs were?
They're probably 6 feet tall.
Right. And if you go to your local print shop, that's going to cost you like $150.
Yeah, they're pretty big. So how do you think they did that? Did they just go to a union shop and say, hey, we're protesting, some Republicans, help us out?
See, the interesting thing about this is probably what's worrisome to me about this. These are supposedly grassroots citizens, but it's just like when you see the protests. We talked about this before. The protests, when it's like sort of on the Democratic side, they all show up with perfectly printed signs, and there's 100 of them there, and it's like, okay, how did that happen? It's not.
They're prefabricated signs. Well, you also can't trust a lot of these activists to spell words correctly.
Well, okay, the one shot I'm looking at right now has a picture of Adam Schnelting, and like you said, it looks like an old timey Post-Dispatch photo from 1938 of some gangster guy. I mean, it's just the way the picture's framed. And I've got Adam Schnelting on the one picture I took, and then there's Justin Sparks on the other one. And on the top, this is the problem, was they didn't use very good font, and it says "Overturn the will of the people." Now, this is obviously the thing about Amendment 3, the abortion thing, right?
Yeah, and I think all these protesters there had been organized by one of the pro-choice groups, I believe.
Is that who did it?
I'm guessing, yeah. I mean, considering none of them are complaining about like, hey, boys should be in girls' locker rooms, or hey, we want sick leave. Like, I'm guessing it was just a pro-abortion protest.
Now, what was interesting was, and when I go to these events, I sort of put on the persona when it's something like this, that I'm a disinterested third party. To a certain extent I am, because I've told you that I don't necessarily consider myself a Republican nor a Democrat. I truly am like that libertarian guy who is going like, okay, don't argue with me about, don't say, well, you want chaos. No, I'm not an anarchist.
Right, we get it. So
I'm
you
a
approach it
libertarian.
as a disinterested person, and you often act as a journalist. You go up to protester groups, ask why they're there, etc.
Right, okay. A guy, is sort of funny because like somebody waved a magic wand. They all just disappeared. They just after I guess this was probably about 6:20, the event was already going on. And all of a sudden, they just all walked off together. But a guy followed me to my car because I went back to my car because I was going to, get something out of my car. And the guy's name, I don't know, and it's funny, he starts talking to me, and he starts talking politics. Young guy, probably, I would say, maybe early 20s, maybe 25, something like that. And he started talking to me, and I think somebody knew who I was. Somebody tipped him off to the point where I didn't really say anything to anybody. I just talked to a couple of people. And he came over to me, and he says, "You're a radio guy, aren't you?" And because I'm with a camera, so I'm a radio guy.
Yeah.
And it turns out that he's worked at a couple of the stations around town, and he's very politically active, and his name is Ty Wilson. Does that ring a bell?
No, I don't know him.
He says that he was there that night, and he was with the protesters, and he knew Scott Fawn, and he said hi to Scott. Scott came in tonight and the whole bit, and he starts talking to me about various things, and it was actually a really interesting conversation. And I said to him, well,
was he lonely, or why was he talking to you?
I think he was lonely.
No, I'm not trying to be funny, but was he not part of that group? Like, did they all go out to eat at Applebee's and they didn't invite him? So he's like, oh, there's an old guy that looks familiar.
I guess. And while we were talking, one of the protester women came up to me and she got right in my face and she said,
"What would you do with a brain if you had one?"
I'm sorry. I'm 2 for 2, John.
So do you want to talk about the event at all, or are we going to do that in C Block?
Well, no. The event was, I didn't stay. I was there for a good hour of the event. And once again, I'm going to give credit where credit is due. Mark Cox was the moderator, and he was very good. And it was a good group. But unfortunately, at one point, when I was taking pictures, because I'm a big photography dude, when I'm taking pictures, and at least someone gave me the stink eye, because as I'm taking pictures and I'm on the side wall about halfway between the front and the rear of the room, a guy and a gal got up right in front of me. And as they started to leave, they started yelling, blah, 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 blah. They were actually protesters, I guess, who were like plants or something like that. And people were giving me the stink eye like it was me. I'm going, not me.
Like you were in cahoots and you wanted to document their protests.
Right, or something, I guess. I don't know. But it was a good event. And what they did was they only had one senator. I can't remember which one of the senators, because the other senators were still down in Jefferson City. And I did not see Bill Eigel there last night. I mean, he was on the bill, but I never saw him. And like I said, I didn't stay for the entire event. But it was interesting. They all, and the interesting thing was, I think every single one of the protesters, I saw what they did was they had 4 chairs on the stage, and they brought the reps and the one senator up in groups of 4. And they, and Mark Cox would say things, and they would react to that, and they'd hand the microphone back and forth to each other and talk and stuff like that. But I think it was noted that none of them had voted for, or will vote for, the Royals thing, the stadium.
Interesting. Well, you would probably expect that, though, right? It's probably a pretty conservative group of legislators.
Right. Now, Mark Cox made an interesting comment. I just did and I've never heard this before. He said, I don't know if he interviewed this guy in the air, he's done research, whatever. He says that he talked to some highfalutin economist dude that knows his stuff, and he said if you take the GDP of the Kansas City Metro, and GDP is gross domestic product, if you take the GDP of the Kansas City Metro, combined, the Chiefs and the Royals are less than 1% of the gross domestic product of Kansas City. And I thought that was a really interesting.
Wow, I wonder if that's actually true.
Well, he said it, and I thought to myself,
well, that doesn't mean it's true. Well, I mean, there you go again, Brad, like hearing a factoid and thinking it's cool. And
you know what?
Accepting it as true. Maybe that is true.
I will text Mark today.
Mark's not going to. Brad, Mark doesn't want to hear from you. Maybe you could put it in Chat GPT.
But the point, if let's say for the sake of argument, that is a true fact, okay?
Which all facts are true, so that's redundant.
What do they always tell us when it comes to sports teams? Oh, it's great for the economy. It brings so much money in. It's tourism magnet, right? Is that what they say?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's the big draw, right? Like you say, you can't lose that money. And, one of the more effective arguments I've heard against the Kansas City Stadium was the idea of, and the great Elijah Harr was talking about this on KWTO. So he doesn't go to many Royals games. He used to go to Missouri Western, and he would go to more back then. But for a lot of people, Brad, if you and I were big baseball fans and we were going to go to a Royals game for God knows what reason, and we had to drive an extra 15 minutes to get there, we probably wouldn't care that much, right? Because if it's over the state line, I mean, who really cares? Like, it's not like it's going to take us a lot longer to travel there.
Well, the interesting part of this is that I'm not an expert in Kansas City, but my two sons lived there for some time, that the nice areas, and I use air quotes because some people would say, I can't believe you said that, but the nicer areas of the Kansas City metro are in Kansas, in Johnson County. And
Overland Park as an example.
Lenexa, Leawood, a bunch of different places over there. Those are the nicer areas of the Kansas City metro, quite honestly, because they're the newer areas. And hats off to the Kansas City or to the Kansas State legislators because of the fact that they worked for that, and that was the big rub. And you know this from years of following the Missouri legislature. One of the things is they had what they called the border wars, where the Kansas State people were literally sometimes by feet going across the border and saying, hey, Mr. Businessman, you have your business here in the state of Missouri. If you move across the border into Kansas, and most of them were like big corporations and things like that, we'll give you some benefits. We'll give you a little tax break. We'll give you a little bit of money to hire some people. And that was the big fight for a long time. Right, John?
Yeah, you're exactly right. And then eventually there became some sort of a truce that Governor Parson worked with Governor Kelly over there, and then there was some fear a few weeks ago that border war truce might end, but who knows?
Right. Okay. We have to take a break. We will be back. What are we going to talk about, C-Block? I mean, do you need a good, crazy, weird story, John?
Yeah, we need a CWS, or if there were any other anecdotes. Did you talk to anybody interesting at the forum, or did you get there late and you didn't get to talk to people? How did that go? You can tell us some C-Block.
Yeah, okay, I'll talk about that.